Hi, welcome to the Small Business Briefing. I am Kellie Neirynck, Vice President of Products and Services for SBAM, and I welcome you here today. I'm going to start us off by doing our new member spotlight. We're very excited to welcome Katrina Milliken and Grace Behavioral Health of Michigan as a premium level member. As a woman-owned business, they provide compassionate, person-centered mental health therapy services offering both in-person care in Chelsea and telehealth support to people throughout Michigan. Their team focuses on creating a safe, supportive environment where clients can feel heard, understood, and empowered to take the next step in their wellness journey. And their work is just a great reminder of how important accessible mental health support is for individuals and families across Michigan. So today I have with me SBAM's Advocacy and Policy Manager, Jacob Manning. He's going to talk to us about what's happening at the Capitol. Brian covered some of this last week with the results of the primary election, but there is still more to discuss today. So Jacob, tell us, how did SBAM's endorsed candidates perform in the primary, and were there any notable wins or surprises?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for tuning in, and thank you, Kelly, for joining me on the briefing today. Happy to be here again to talk more election, always our favorite thing to talk about. As Kelly mentioned last week, Brian had on Kyle Mlin of MERS News, who's an expert pundit in the political space here in Lansing, and they talked about a lot of the sort of top of the ticket results from the primary election that happened. It was August 4th. And they talked a lot about the gubernatorial race, they talked about the Senate race, and they talked about some of the state Senate races. But I want to take an opportunity today to talk about some of the candidates in the races that we got involved with. SBAM does have a political action committee. We do get involved in state house and state senate races. In this most recent election, we endorsed 74 candidates total. We endorsed 59 in the state house and 15 in the state senate. And the headline is that our candidates fared very well. All but two of those 74 candidates are going to advance now to the general election. So that's 97% of our candidates total. So most of those candidates did not have a primary challenger. They were unopposed. And so they advance without having a competition yet, and their main competition will be in the general election, but not all of them. We did take some chances. Just a little bit into our process, the decision on who we choose to endorse, they aren't decisions made by SBAM staff, they're made by our PAC board. And our PAC board is comprised of about 20 or so of our most politically engaged small business owners. And when this group meets, staff will bring to them a number of things that this group will evaluate each of the candidates based on and choose whether or not to endorse in a race. So they consider a number of things. They consider a candidate questionnaire. We send out a lengthy, extensive questionnaire that covers all the most important issues to small businesses in Michigan. We require that all candidates who receive the Small Biz PAC endorsement fill out a questionnaire. We need these candidates to come to the table and be actively seeking out our endorsement in order for us to endorse them. They also need to have the voting record. So when the chips are on the table, do you support small business? Do you side with small business on the issues that are most important to us when they appear on the voting board? But there's also some nuance to that as well, because there are a lot of candidates who have not stellar voting record. But when Kelly and Brian and I are having these conversations with legislators, we have this understanding that not every bad issue that is introduced in the legislature appears before a vote, even if it would pass if it were up on the board. So for a vote to even get on the board, that means that the leaders of the caucus need to be confident that it's going to pass. But what isn't reflected in the voting record is if there's a legislator who stands up in the caucus room and says, I don't support this because it would be bad for small business. And so even if that bill that is bad for small business never appears for a vote, doesn't appear in the voting record, we know that that legislator had an impact in making sure that an anti-small business policy was stopped. So that's just sort of what the nuance is that goes into these decisions. Those are sort of the just the general outline of how the group makes their decisions. Now, as I mentioned, we did take some chances. There were seven candidates that the PAC board endorsed that were not incumbent candidates. So this means that most of the candidates we endorsed are incumbents, some of them are not. And five of those seven candidates ended up winning their primaries, their contested primary elections, and will advance to the general election. So that's pretty impressive. Our PAC board doesn't go on suicide missions. We don't go after lost causes, but when we do choose to endorse a non-incumbent candidate, it's for a few reasons. It's either we have a history working with that candidate in the past, and they've proven themselves to be a reliable voice for small business, or just based on questionnaire and intel that we have from our sources on the ground, we have a good feeling that that candidate is distinctly more pro small business than their opponent. So the two candidates that did not end up winning were those candidates in those open primary races. Those are always going to be the highest risk. Those two candidates were it was Frank Liberati in the second House district, and he's more of he was a former legislator who we worked with. He's a small business owner himself. We had a great relationship with him. We felt that he would be the most pro small business candidate in that race. He ended up falling short in his primary. And the other was Mark Polstoffer in the 28th State Senate District. He's an Ingham County Commissioner who ended up falling short in his Senate race. And again, that was not somebody we had worked with before, but somebody who we felt strongly enough that they were going to be distinctly better, more pro small business than their opponent. And so that is why we ended up going for that candidate, but both of those fell short, but the other five did succeed. So definitely some positive results that we feel happy about. 97% is pretty impressive. And then as we continue to move forward, we're going to continue to hope for more success for our endorsed candidates.
Thanks, Jacob. So, as we look to the future, what can we all expect in the election process leading into the general election in November?
Yeah, so really the first round of endorsements is just the first step. And so I mentioned that we endorsed 74 candidates. We now have 71 endorsed candidates who are heading in to the general after some losses. And then after a story we're going to be talking about in a little bit, we have 71 candidates going into the general election. But that's not going to be it. There are a lot more races that were an open field in a primary where maybe there were three small business candidates or pro small business candidates that we thought would all be good. And so the PAC board decided, let's just stay out for now and get involved after the primary. Situations like that happen all up and down the ballot. And so there are a lot of those sorts of races that now that the primary is over, we have a little bit more information. We can circle back and revisit those races. There are a lot of more competitive races where there's going to have to be more extensive conversations about how we want to get involved in certain races, how we weigh certain factors against each other, et cetera. And so there will be some more considerations in the state house and state senate races, but there will also be further conversations in the top of the ticket races as well. So just as a reminder, SBAM does not get involved in U.S. Senate races. We don't get involved in congressional races. We also don't get involved in county commissioner races or mayoral races or anything to that level. We're focused on the statewide level, and that includes state house, state senate, and then the issues at the top of the ticket as well. Like last election in 2024, we endorsed two candidates for Michigan Supreme Court. We'll be having those conversations as well. There are two Supreme Court seats that are up this year that the PAC board will be considering. We also have, of course, a gubernatorial election coming up, and we have those two candidates locked in now. And so the PAC board will begin to consider questionnaires from those candidates as we get to understand a little bit more about these candidates. We have more information now than we did before. Those races will be considered as well as alongside Attorney General and Secretary of State as well. So there are a lot more conversations that the PAC board is still yet to have. So more information to come, I would say likely in the next month or two. So keep an eye out for that.
So, for those of us who want to follow along more closely, in addition to watching the briefing each week, where can we find SBAM Small Biz Pack endorsement and election related updates?
Yes, so with the help from our communications team, we have a great resource available on our website. It's the Small Business Election Center available at sbam.org. And I think there's a link for it as well that's going to be dropped in the chat. And there's a couple pieces of this website that will be useful to use. So the first one, it's a page that has 4 links on it now. So the first one goes to our PAC, and I'll provide a little bit more information on that in a moment. Uh, the second is a list of our endorsed candidates. This is the state house and state senate candidates that we have deemed to be the most pro small business candidates in their race. State house and state senate all listed on one page. And on that page, you can see a headshot of them, you can see their district number, and you can click on a link to their website directly from our page. We also have a page open for gubernatorial candidates. If you are an SBAM VIP or elite member, you log into your member profile and you visit our website, and you're able to see, if you recall, at the end of last year and into the early this year, we hosted a series of events, the SBAM Road to 2026 Candidate Series, where we sat down with, at the time, I think it was 8 or 9 different candidates who are running for governor. We got them all in a room with a bunch of small business owners, and we had a great conversation with each of them, asking them about what issues are most important to them, and talked about what their vision of Michigan is moving forward. And so the 2 candidates that are remaining in the race, John James and Jocelyn Benson, we did have the opportunity to sit down with both of them. And if you're a VIP or elite member, you can click on that page and you'll be able to see the video recordings of those 2 events that are available to you. We also are going to have more information that we're going to be rolling out in the coming weeks. As I mentioned previously, we do have questionnaires that we've gathered from the gubernatorial candidates, the attorney general candidates, the secretary of state candidates, and all of this is just to sort of uh, make it so this can be your sort of one-stop shop. Figure out uh, informationally, even if it's a candidate that we are not endorsing, we want to be able to provide our members with information about the candidates who are running for elected office and how they're going to promote small business in their new roles if they do win their election. So that's something to look out for that will be coming soon. And the other thing, this is a sort of cool tool that we rolled out for the first time this year. At the bottom of the page, there's a little search bar function. It's called a Find Your Legislator tool. And this is cool. We get questions all the time like, I want to get involved, but I don't really know who my state representative is. I don't know who my state senator is. This makes it really easy to find. You just plug in an address. It could be your home address where you're going to be registered to vote. It could be your business address if you're just curious if those happen to be in different communities or different districts. And you plug in your address there, and it right from our website gives you a whole list of all the different elected officials who represent you, depending on what district you're in. So definitely a cool tool that we're happy to be able to roll out just to make it a little bit easier. Don't have to open up a second tab and figure out, oh, who's my state senator, who's my state representative. And then you can kind of cross-reference that with who are the candidates that are the ones that we happen to endorse.
That is fantastic. So, beyond just staying informed, you mentioned there are ways for members to get involved, engage, and support with SBAM's advocacy work. Can you elaborate a little bit on that for us?
Yeah, so the reason that we're able to support these candidates that are running for office is because of the support of our members, of course. That's the reason why we're here in the first place, is through the support of our members. But through the support, our PAC has really become impressive, especially you compare us with where we had been in years prior. And we've really grown to a respectable spot amongst our peers, and it's really through the power and support of our members. So we would encourage you, if you believe in the mission, if you believe in promoting entrepreneurship in state government, we appreciate your support through the Small Biz PAC. And like I mentioned, that is linked on our Election Center website, but we also do have a fundraiser that's coming up in Traverse City. That's going to be on Tuesday, September 22nd. It's up in Traverse City at Left Foot Charlie. And we'd love to have you there, of course. You can find more information on that at sbam.org/events. But of course, happy for everybody. Thank you to everybody who has donated to the PAC in the past, and really, your support is very appreciated. It's important work. It's important to promoting the mission.
And September in Traverse City is a beautiful time of year, so that's a great excuse to make it up there for that fundraiser. So staying on track with all things government relations, there are several key races that could shape the balance of power in Lansing. So Jacob, will you talk about the House and the seats that are most likely to flip? As the election gets closer, what are some of the under the radar races that small business owners should be watching closely?
Yeah, so just looking at the sort of landscape, there are a lot of pundits around town and around the country generally who are sort of expecting this to be what they call a wave election. So last week on the program, Brian had on Kyle Malin with MERS News here in Lansing, and he made this suggestion too. He said it could be a wave election, and there are a couple factors for why that might be. The first is just individual fundraising. For one, most of the Democratic candidates in each of the races that I'm about to talk about are currently outraising their Republican opponents. Um, Now, the House and the Senate Republican campaign committees each have more cash on hand than their Democratic counterparts, but the individual candidates themselves have done a better job at fundraising to this point. And those campaign committees, of course, are going to be spending a lot to support their incumbents. But the second factor that's really playing into this is turnout. And for me, what I think, and I'm not unique here, this is not some unique insight. The big question that's on everybody's mind going into November is how big is the enthusiasm gap? You're starting to hear this term. I think Kyle tossed it around last week. He talked about how in the state Senate, him and Brian talked about some of the state Senate races to keep an eye on. Today, I'm going to be talking about the House, but he said that if turnout in November is the same as what it was in August, in the respective Democratic and Republican primaries, if you look up and down the ballot at the 38 Senate districts in Michigan, if the turnout were the same, the number of people who voted in the Democratic primary versus the number of people who voted in the Republican primary, if you just extrapolated that and said those same voters are going to appear on November, which isn't how it works, but this is how, just this is the fringe case. If all those case, if all those same people came up and voted, then the Democrats would have a 24 to 14 majority in the state Senate. And the same could be said for the state House. MERS did a little analysis on this, analyzing the turnout in the primary elections, and said that if the same number of Democrats and Republicans turned out in November as they did in August, that Democrats would have a 74 to 36 majority in the House, which is stark. And since my time in Lansing, it's never been more than a 50 some to 50 some split, but this isn't completely uncommon. We haven't had a wave election in a long time. Right now, the split is 58 to 52 favoring Republicans, but a 74 to 36 uh, split would be people losing elections that were not expecting it completely. But again, this is what Kyle mentioned uh, in last week's program is that this has happened before. So I'm going to be talking about 10 races briefly because I could talk about this all day if given the opportunity. But these were just 10 races that were compiled by MERS News as what they consider to be the 10 races that are most likely to flip from one party control to the other. And of the races they chose, they compiled uh, 10 districts. Eight of those are currently held by Republicans and two are held by Democrats. So in their mind, they are seeing that the most likely seats to flip are seats currently held by Republicans, and they are expecting those to be flipped over to Democratic control. So the number one most likely district to flip, they say, is an open district in Sterling Heights. It's the 54th House district. It's currently held by by a state representative who's running for state senate and is now currently an open race. So there are advantages to being an incumbent in these races. You have higher name ID, you have pieces of mail that go out to different constituents of yours, and this being an open race, that incumbency advantage is not there. It was already a swing seat, but now they're expecting that to be the number one race most likely to flip. The second one is actually it's a Battle Creek-based district that was won by State Representative Steve Frisbee. He won this race by 71 votes in 2024. The Republican holding this seat now is going to have to fight pretty hard to keep this one from Jim Hadsma. And then third on the list, they have former SBAM legislator of the year, Kathy Schmaltz, who's a Republican in this district. This is a Jackson area district, and she is facing it. I mean, she's had three tough elections so far, but this one is going to be tough as well in a tougher environment than certainly than what they had in 2024. So again, I could, if given the opportunity, I could talk about this literally all day, but there are some other districts around the state that are all going to be looked at. But just the high level here, what we're going to be watching most closely is just seeing what that enthusiasm gap actually looks like when it gets to November, how closely that ties to what we saw in the primary elections in August. Of course, it's not always going to be the same tie or the same crossover. It's different people are motivated to vote for different reasons, but certainly a lot of interesting races coming up.
Never a dull moment. Another development getting attention is John James' choice of DeBoyer as his lieutenant governor running mate. So let's talk about what you know about DeBoyer and what this means for the ticket.
Yes, there was a list last week that was circulating. It had about seven names on it. That was James' short list for lieutenant governor. And the winner last week, it was Thursday, it was officially announced that it's going to be Jay DeBoyer, who is a state representative from Clay over in St. Clair County. He represents the New Baltimore area, New Baltimore and east over to the lake. And Representative DeBoyer is a state representative. He's really second in command behind Speaker Hall in the House leadership team. He's taken a very prominent leadership role over the last couple of years. He's only serving in his second term, so he really hit the ground running. He was a St. Clair County clerk for like a dozen years. Excuse me, it was 12 years, and he's the chair of the House Oversight Committee. So he's really been responsible for changing what the House Oversight Committee does. This was a committee that had a less prominent role in the past, but in this term, the House Republicans have sort of used this committee to uh, subpoena people and bring people in for hearings to figure out government efficiency matters. And uh, this role has sort of brought him into the spotlight. He's been a big believer in governmental efficiency and election integrity too are both two issues that are really important to him. So him being brought into this role, I think, was seen by a lot of people as a way for James to maybe mend some fences with sort of the grassroots of the party, try and take somebody who is a popular figure with some of these uh, local party people and hopefully present a unified ticket as they go on to face Jocelyn Benson in November.
What happens to his state house seat, Jacob, now that he joined the ticket?
Yeah, so right now he is running for re-election in the 63rd House District. And so that is, I mentioned earlier that we endorsed 74 candidates going into the primary, and now we only have 71 candidates advancing. We had two that lost, and now DeBoyer is removing himself from the possibility of being reelected. Republicans are heavily favored to win this seat, but since the primary was just 2 weeks ago, November is just a few months away, there has to be some sort of process to find his replacement for the ticket. So what's going to end up happening is that in St. Clair County, it's a district that's split between two counties. So the Republican parties from St. Clair County and Macomb County are going to have to get together. They're going to have to decide on his replacement who's going to make it to the November ticket. And so this just a sort of interesting historical tidbit is the example that all these news outlets are trotting out for, well, do we have any historical precedent for this? And we do. It was actually about 16 years ago when famous nerd Rick Snyder chose SBAM's very own president and CEO Brian Kelly as his lieutenant governor pick. And at the time, Brian had just won a primary for to be a state senator in the 33rd Senate seat. It was a contentious primary, and Brian, if he were here, I'm sure could talk a lot more in depth about what the process was like. But after Brian was pulled to run on the ticket with now former Governor Snyder, the primary opponent thought that he deserved to be the nominee, but actually it's the county parties at the time that got to get together and choose somebody who actually was not the person who came in second in the primary. So a little bit of interesting history that has an SBAM tie as well.
I'm sure Brian remembers as if it happened just yesterday. Uh, so on the other side of the race, there's also speculation around who Jocelyn Benson may choose as her running mate. So when can we expect more from her side?
Yeah, so Benson hasn't announced her pick yet, but she's coming up on a deadline. The deadline is August 25th is when she's going to have to announce. And there's been a list circulating. The three candidates who are in contention are former Minority Leader Jim Ananich from the Flint area, current Senate Appropriations Chair Sarah Anthony, state senator from the Lansing area, and then current Senate Majority Leader Winnie Brinks. Those are sort of the three candidates who have been thrown around and the list recently, but the reports change depending on the day. So I saw a report last week that said that Secretary Benson is leaning towards choosing one of the two female candidates who are on that list. So either Senator Anthony or Senator Brinks. But either way, coming up on a deadline soon, so we should have more news hopefully by the next time we have a briefing.
Okay. And can you touch on, so after the primary election, there was another contest that was decided among Senate Republicans when Hawk was chosen for Senate Republican leader. Can you fill us in on the details about that?
Yeah, so this was something that sort of fell by the wayside just because there's so much news after the primary election. But there was a bit of a race going on, not anything super contentious, but of course, some jockeying, trying to determine who is going to be the next leader of the Senate Republican caucus. Current Senate Minority Leader Eric Nesbitt, of course, ran for governor, is not running for re-election in the Senate. And so there's going to have to be somebody to step up and take that mantle. And it seemed at the end that it was between Senator Roger Houck and Senator Michael Weber, both candidates who SBAM has endorsed in the past. And it was Senator Houck who came out uh, right after the primary election and announced that the Senate Republican caucus had coalesced around him. Senator Weber, of course, made his statements and said that looking to present a unified front. And as I mentioned, the Senate Republican caucus actually has the most cash on hand out of any of the four caucuses. They have about $7.8 million. The House Republicans similarly have about $7.8 million compared to the House Democrats, who each have 5.3, 4.7. So definitely lower on that list. So with that, we have confirmed leaders for the four caucuses. It's going to be Senator Houck, Senator Camilleri will lead the Democrats, Speaker Matt Hall, of course, for the House Republicans, and then House Minority Leader Ranjit Puri for the House Democrats. So now that we have that, we know who the leaders are expected to be going into next year.
Okay. So Jacob, I'm going to shift gears on you a little bit. I'd like to talk about a project that we've been tracking closely, and it sounds like we got an update last week, which is the Line 5. So can you tell us what you know about the next steps for that project?
Yes. So last week, the Army Corps of Engineers concluded a years-long review process and approved the federal permit for Enbridge's Line 5 tunnel. So this is a story that we've been tracking for a long time now. Line 5, of course, is for SBAM, we've long supported the tunnel because it's we view it to be vital for continuing to supply affordable, reliable energy to Michigan, all corners of Michigan, and believe that the Line 5 tunnel project, which just for some reference, the tunnel or the line 5 is already there at the bottom of the lake bed, and moving it to a tunnel under the bedrock is actually going to protect the line from anchor strike or any other number of things that could happen. It's, the line is currently safe, but putting it under the bedrock, it makes it even safer. And so this has been a long process where there's been a lot of opposition from environmental groups, but it's been working through the process as Enbridge continues to show regulators that this is going to be a safe project. And part of that process was just concluded when they received approval from the Army Corps of Engineers. And so the next step in the process actually received a development a couple weeks back when the Michigan Supreme Court created this new roadblock that still needs to be cleared when they asked that the Michigan Public Service Commission do a more extensive environmental review of the Line 5 project before they grant their approval. So this new development does not end the other roadblocks in the way, but is just another hurdle that has been cleared.
Okay. And then I'd also like you to touch on the 60 by 30, the progress that's been made, and how the education policy connects to the talent challenges that many of our small businesses are facing. Where does Michigan currently stand on with the 60 by 30 goal?
Yes. So SBAM has been really involved in the 60 by 30 goal. And again, this is the goal to have 60% of Michigan's working age adults have some sort of post-secondary degree or credential by the year 2030. At the time when Michigan committed to this goal, we were at about 45%, but now we have improved about 7 percentage points. Now we're up at about 51.8 percentage points, but we are still 8.2% off. So just about 4 years away from 2030, we still have a long ways to go. This is from a report given by MyLeap director Beverly Walker Graffia. So still a long ways to go in reaching that goal. And we are running a bit short on time, so we're going to have to go hyperspeed for these last couple.
Yeah, I think I just finally I'd like you to touch on our recent training that we did for advocacy champions. I think that's just really important for you to mention, and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay, yes. Before we go, we wanted to let everyone know we haven't had a chance. We advertised this when we were promoting it, but we haven't had a chance to circle back and talk to people about how great the training was. And this was our Advocacy Champions training. This was sort of something new that we were rolling out to get members more involved in the advocacy process, show people how they can engage with state government in their day-to-day business. And we brought members in for an all-day training. We started at 9 in the morning and left at 4 in the afternoon. We provided lunch and breakfast and had a great time. We had a conversation with former Speaker of the House, Joe Tate. We had media training. We brought in our partners from Resch Strategies just to show people how to effectively work with media. We brought in a member of the executive office of the governor to show how to apply for a board or a commission, which I thought was particularly, I think the members who were there found that particularly interesting, just not something that people often consider about engagement, but definitely extremely impactful. And we actually had the fortune of being able to go to a committee room in the state capitol, sit down with the committee chair in the committee room, and talk for a little bit about the committee process and sort of how it works. And so we have a link. If you're interested in signing up for a training like this, we are in the process of scheduling another one. We don't have a date yet for our next one, but we would like it. Engagement is always what helps these events thrive. And so the more people we can have at these events, the more impactful they can be to more people. And so if you have any interest in any of these things, we would love to have you sign up using this link, and you'll be on our short list. And once we plan that next date, you'll receive an email. And if it fits into your schedule, we'd love to see you there.
Absolutely. Jacob, always a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for helping to break all of this down for us today, keeping us informed on all of the policy advocacy issues that matter most to all of us as small businesses. Thank you for joining us, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you.